You open your eyes after a restless night. The light from your phone immediately pulls you out of bed. One notification, then two, then three. Your mind, still foggy, is dragged into dozens of trivial things. The rest of the day, you just react to emails, texts, other people's glances, other people's thoughts. By the end of the day, you're exhausted and don't know why. Nothing terrible happened, but nothing meaningful did either. Are you truly living or merely reacting? We don't lose because we lack time, but because we lose initiative. The modern world doesn't steal our freedom with force, but with distraction. Small noises, unconscious scrolling, petty praise and criticism. And slowly, we forget something simple. Real power doesn't lie in knowing more or doing more, but in the ability to focus, to trust, and to act consistently from within. Stoicism doesn't teach us to be perfect, but to be deliberate, to know what we live for, and to be willing to live by it, regardless of circumstances. Today, let us return to 3 unshakable foundations. Focus on yourself, trust in yourself, and act as yourself, because from this point, transformation begins. 1. Focus is the act of a free person. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's having the discipline to choose what's truly worth doing. In a world where attention is the most fiercely hunted resource, the one who knows how to focus is the one who knows how to protect themselves. You are not chained by iron, but you can be bound by fragments of information, messages, images, and the quiet noise that slips into every moment of your day. And the danger is, you often don't notice this captivity until it's too late, when your mind is worn out, when you're stuck in a reactive mode, no longer calm enough to think independently or act by your own values. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't waste the rest of your life speculating about what others are thinking." That line isn't just a reminder of the futility of worrying about opinions, it's a warning about what you allow into your mind. Each day, you wake with a fresh chance to decide what gets past the gates of your attention and what must be left outside. If you don't choose, the world will choose for you. And most of what it lets in will distract you, manipulate you, and pull you away from who you truly want to be. Focus is a form of discipline. It's not a talent you're born with, but a skill built through small daily decisions. It's choosing stillness in the morning instead of drowning in endless input. It's saying no to the urgent but empty in favor of the important and effortful. Stoics don't chase busyness, they pursue clarity. They don't follow fleeting feelings, they let reason lead. And focus is reason made visible. Modern life has turned distraction into an industry. Apps are designed to keep you there. Algorithms fine-tuned to capture your attention. But you don't need to fight the whole world. You only need to win against yourself in each moment, when you reach for your phone out of habit, when you're tempted to scroll another video, when you're drawn into needless arguments. Every time you stop, breathe, and return to what truly matters, you are training your inner strength. Focus doesn't mean being rigid or cut off from life. It simply means you are living with intent. You are rejecting the random calls of the world to become the leader of your own mind. When you decide what's worthy of your attention, every action gains depth, every decision carries weight, and each day slips by less meaninglessly. In the silence of a focused mind, you hear the clearest voice, the voice of who you truly are. 2. Real confidence is built in quiet moments. We often believe self-trust comes from a big milestone, a grand achievement, a public victory, a moment of brilliance that silences all doubt. But Stoics see a simpler truth. Trust isn't formed in the spotlight of success, but in the small, ordinary, quiet moments when no one is watching and no one is applauding. It's when you get up early without being told, when you speak the truth, even if it complicates things, when you finish what you promised yourself, simply because you promised. Trust doesn't grow from fleeting good feelings on lucky days. It's built piece by piece through acts that align what you believe is right with what you actually do, especially when doing the right thing is hard, inconvenient, or unrewarded. Every time you do what's right when no one sees, every time you keep your word to yourself with no one waiting, every time you stand firm while others give up, that's another brick laid in the foundation of inner confidence. Conversely, every time you give in, every time you make an excuse, every time you choose what's easy over what's right, though no one condemns you, you'll feel a small crack inside your trust. Those cracks don't break you at once, but if left to grow, they'll erode your ability to believe in yourself when challenges rise. And a person who cannot trust themselves will not stay steady in life's storms, no matter how much praise they receive. Stoics understand clearly, you can't wait for proof to start believing in yourself. Trust doesn't follow evidence. Trust is what you build before the results arrive. You must live like the person you aim to become, repeat the actions of someone trustworthy, and keep doing what's right even when it feels like nothing's changing. Because each of those small, quiet acts is a vote for the person you're shaping yourself into. Then, one day, without applause, without spotlights, you'll look back and see that you've changed. You're no longer the one who doubts, delays, or hesitates. You've become someone dependable, someone who stands firm alone, someone who no longer needs the world's agreement to feel centered. And it all began with a chain of seemingly small moments, the moment you chose to keep your word, even when breaking it was the easy way out. Real trust doesn't come from what you tell yourself. It comes from what you prove through action. You can't keep saying you'll change without doing anything. But once you've built that trust through conscious choices, you won't need external motivation to move forward. You'll know that as long as you keep your promises to yourself, no matter what happens around you, you are still on your path. 3. Self-belief doesn't come from praise. There's a subtle illusion many carry all their lives, that one day, when they're good enough, accomplished enough, successful enough, the world will recognize them, and only then will they finally believe in themselves. But the truth is, if you're always waiting for others to validate your worth, the trust you build will be as fragile as their moods. The Stoic never defines themselves through others' eyes. They don't need applause to move forward, nor do they stop in the face of criticism. Because they understand, self-belief doesn't come from claps, it comes from disciplined choices repeated daily. Confidence isn't a rush of joy from a compliment. It's the steadiness you find when you face fear and still act, when you meet challenges and refuse to retreat, when you tell yourself, "I will do what's right," and then do it, even if no one notices. It's a quiet kind of strength, not loud, not boastful, but visible in your gaze, your steps, your decisions. Stoics treat self-trust as a moral principle, not a reward from fate. They don't wait for miracles to start believing. They create trust through consistent acts, waking up on time, keeping promises, finishing what they start, telling the truth when silence is easier, staying silent when truth needs no shouting. These small, unimpressive habits are what form a deep and resilient core. You can't hide from yourself. No matter how strong you appear to others, you know how many times you've broken your word, delayed what mattered, or made excuses to avoid what must be done. And you alone will feel the strength growing as you begin to live with integrity when you stop saying, "I will," and start doing. Self-belief doesn't need to be spoken, it shows in how you walk, with direction, with purpose, without waiting for someone to guide you. Real confidence doesn't come from what you've achieved. It comes from knowing you gave your all to achieve it. It's the respect you feel for yourself when you look back on a day, knowing you chose action over delay, discipline over drifting, difficulty over comfort. These are the proofs, and when you have enough of them, you don't need borrowed belief. You won't say, "I think I can." You'll know you did because you did. Stoics don't speak much about themselves. They let action speak. They know real confidence isn't believing you'll never fall, it's believing you'll rise every time you do. And more importantly, they know if you don't trust yourself, then no matter how many others do, you'll still feel hollow. But if you build that trust with yourself, day by day, then even when no one stands with you, you'll still have enough strength to keep walking. 4. Strength doesn't come from inspiration, but from consistency. Inspiration is like a passing wind. It arrives quickly and leaves just as fast. Some days you wake up full of drive, ready to take on the world. Other days, you just want to let it all go. If you let yourself be ruled by inspiration, you'll only move forward when the skies are clear, when your spirit is high, when everything aligns. But a steady life isn't built on fleeting moments of excitement. It's built on repetition, steady, persistent, and at times, mundane. The Stoic does not rely on fleeting emotions to live by their values. They don't wait for inspiration to act. They act as a matter of discipline. Because they understand this. What truly shapes you is not what you do when you feel like it, but what you continue doing when you don't. The days without motivation are the truest test of strength. And if you can keep your commitment to yourself on those days, you become someone you can trust. Consistency is not glamorous. It doesn't instantly earn admiration, nor does it yield big results after just a few repetitions. But if you look closely, every real achievement in life shares one thing: a long chain of silent, repeated actions. The bodybuilder doesn't build muscle in 1 week of motivation. The writer doesn't finish a book in a single inspired morning. The disciplined person doesn't gain strength from a moment of resolve, but from thousands of repeated small decisions, especially on days filled with fatigue, frustration, or loneliness. Consistency teaches you patience. It reminds you that big results come from doing small things regularly, without interruption. It teaches you to let go of your hope for miracles or sudden breakthroughs and instead place your trust in the quiet process of right living. You don't need to change your whole life in a week. You only need to change how you repeat your behaviors each day. A right action, repeated, not only builds habit, it reshapes how you see yourself from a dreamer to someone living with commitment. What's truly dangerous is not a lack of inspiration, but the absence of a solid life system to carry you forward when inspiration fades. The Stoic understands this, so they train consistency as a form of strength. They don't chase momentary feelings. They choose the stability that comes from discipline. They don't ask, "Do I feel like doing this today?" They ask, "What have I committed to, and will I honor it today?" When you repeat a small act long enough, it stops being a task and becomes part of who you are. You no longer ask whether or not to do it. You are simply the kind of person who does it. And that's where true strength begins, not when repetition becomes a burden, but when it becomes the foundation that holds you steady through life's unpredictability. In a world of constant motion and upheaval, the consistent one is the most dependable, not because they are always enthusiastic, but because they always show up, even when no one expects them to. 5. Action is where thought becomes real. In today's world, people spend hours talking about goals, sharing plans, journaling dreams, pinning visions to a board. But the Stoic asks one question: have you started yet? Because to them, No matter how noble a thought, it means nothing if it is not brought into action. It's not what you think that defines you, it's what you do, especially when you don't feel like doing it or when conditions aren't ideal. Stoic philosophy is not a collection of quotes to ponder in silence. It's a call to step into reality, to face the truth, to fully live the present. They don't seek advice to feel better, they seek action to live better. A thought not acted on is just an unfinished ideal, and an unfinished ideal can be easily replaced by delay, fear, or self-deception. We often think we need to wait for the right time when we feel ready, confident, energized before starting. But that's the biggest trap that stops action. The Stoic knows this. There is no perfect moment to act, but now. Every time you delay because of emotion, you weaken your ability to decide. And every time you act, even imperfectly, you prove to yourself that emotions do not control you. Action doesn't have to be big. It only needs to be specific. Not, I want to live healthier, but I'll walk 15 minutes every morning. Not, I will grow as a person, but I'll read 5 pages today. The Stoic chooses small but clear actions. They don't let the mind wander in ambiguity. Because the more vague you are, the easier it is to avoid. But when the task is clear, you face one truth. Either you do it or you don't. And that clarity builds strength. Action is the most living promise you make to yourself. When you act, you don't just produce an external result, you're shaping a self that is responsible, purposeful, capable of turning thought into reality. Every action you take is a vote for the person you want to become. And if you keep going even slowly, even clumsily one day, you'll look back and see that you've left the realm of ideas and stepped fully into the life you once only imagined. The Stoic doesn't wait for perfection to begin, because they know action, not theory, is where you're forged. You will learn more from one day of real effort than a month of reading and thinking. And if you fall, you don't ask, can I do this? You simply ask, how will I do it differently next time? That is how thought becomes truth, not through talk, not through dreaming, but through every step you take, regardless of how smooth the road is. 6. Your invincible self is not in the future, it's built today. Many people carry an ideal version of themselves in their minds, a strong, calm figure, untouched by others' opinions, immune to judgment, clear about their needs, living by their values. But sadly, they believe that version will arrive someday when they have enough money, enough success, enough experience, or when the world around them becomes kinder. The truth the Stoic sees clearly is this: the steady self does not appear with time. It is trained in each moment in the here and now. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly become invincible. You don't magically become immune to negative emotions or unaffected by how others see you. That grounded version of you doesn't come from miracles. It comes from thousands of small, deliberate choices made consistently, often in silence, rarely praised. It's when you choose silence over provocation, right action when no one watches, keeping your word when no one reminds you. Each of those choices is a stone laid in the foundation of your character. And over time, they become a wall that nothing can shake if you stay committed to building it. The Stoic doesn't wait for the world to be at peace before learning to be calm. They practice calm in the chaos. They don't wait for approval to live by their ideals. They live by them even when misunderstood, because they don't measure themselves by agreement. They center themselves on virtue. And virtue isn't earned through a seminar. It's the result of consistency in thought, action, and reaction, especially when life doesn't go your way. Your strongest self is not cold, not numb, not superior. It is the version you can trust, the one who won't trade values for temporary ease, who won't betray principles for convenience, who won't lose themselves just to please others. And you don't need 10 more years to become that person. You can begin today with one small decision: to tell the truth instead of avoiding it, to finish what you promised, to sit in silence for 5 minutes instead of reacting too quickly. Each day is a chance to move closer to that version or away from it. There is no neutral path. If you delay today, you train the habit of surrender. If you act today, even in a small way, you strengthen your inner foundation. And when that foundation is deep and firm, no matter how the world shifts, no matter who leaves or what falls apart, you'll still be standing. Not because you're lucky, but because you've been building yourself all along. 7. Self-direction is the key to not living someone else's life. One of the quietest tragedies of modern life is that people are incredibly busy yet feel profoundly empty. They work non-stop, respond constantly, stay connected to hundreds of people, yet when they pause and ask, "Where am I going?" they don't have a clear answer. That's when you realize you're living the life others expect of you, chasing goals that society praises, following pre-written standards while forgetting the most important thing: yourself. The Stoic does not live by the wind, nor let circumstances or public opinion decide who they should be. They live with an internal compass, mindful of each action and each choice. Self-direction doesn't mean rigidity or stubbornness. It means knowing what you're doing, why you're doing it, and whether it aligns with the deepest values within you. It's an inner clarity that frees you from chasing the crowd because you already know where you're going. Without direction, you become a victim of everything: of emails, of invitations, of trends, of passing moods. A person without direction isn't lazy. They're just always busy doing things that bring no true value. And by the end of the day, they feel drained, not because they lived fully, but because they spent the day living up to others' expectations. Self-direction is a habit the Stoic cultivates daily. They don't let their mind be led by circumstance. They establish principles to keep themselves on track. Each night, they ask, "Did I live with intention today? Did I react or respond? Am I living in line with my values or being swept away by the noise out there?" These seemingly simple questions are the foundation of a life that is deep, steady, and resilient. Self-direction doesn't come from a 10-year plan lived out rigidly. It comes from the clarity to course-correct daily without losing your way. It's a balance between reason and flexibility, between firmness and adaptability. You're not at the mercy of circumstances because you know how to bend with change while keeping your footing. In a world constantly trying to pull you toward its agenda through ads, social media, and the culture of comparison, holding to your own direction is a courageous act. It doesn't need applause. It just needs to be honestly maintained by you. And when your direction is clear from within, every decision becomes easier, every relationship more honest, and each day more meaningful, not because you did more, but because you lived true to yourself. 8. The obstacle is not in the way. It is the way. Most of us grow up believing that only when things go smoothly can we grow. We seek ease, hope life gets less difficult, and assume that setbacks, failures, and blocks slow us down or throw us off track. But the Stoic believes the opposite. They believe the obstacle is not in the way, it is the way. Because it's not when life is gentle that we learn deeply, but when it forces us to confront our limits. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's not just a philosophical insight, it's a life principle that can change how you view misfortune. When a plan collapses, when a friend walks away, when an opportunity doesn't arrive as expected, it's not proof you're on the wrong path. It might be the opening to a truer, deeper, better one. Not because the world changed, but because you were challenged to see with more maturity. The Stoic doesn't see difficulty as disaster. They see it as a tool for inner growth. A chaotic environment teaches calm. An unfair criticism teaches how to stand firm in silence. A bitter failure teaches how to continue without consolation. They don't avoid adversity or flee from challenge. They go through it with the mindset of one being forged, learning patience, restraint, emotional mastery, and most of all, the ability to redefine adversity as a necessary part of growing up. What breaks us is not what happens, but how we respond. And if you see obstacles as things that shouldn't be, you'll live in avoidance and resentment. But if you begin to see them as necessary tests, as the weight you lift to build mental muscle, then every stumble becomes a natural step forward. The Stoic doesn't wish life were easier. They only wish to be strong enough to walk through anything. From this mindset, they develop a kind of strength not dependent on circumstances. When the world is chaotic, they return to awareness. When misunderstood, they live more clearly with themselves. When facing loss, they cling tighter to what can't be taken: character, principle, and the ability to choose their response. And it's through facing such obstacles that they become deeper, calmer, and unshaken by the messiness of life. So instead of praying for a lighter burden, pray for stronger shoulders. Instead of avoiding hardship, step toward it and ask, "What is this teaching me?" And when you train your mind to see obstacles as opportunities, then everyday challenge or not becomes meaningful. Because in that way, you're not just surviving, you're growing. 9. Courage is acting without needing applause. There's a quiet kind of courage that is rarely mentioned but lies at the core of the Stoic life. It is the courage to act without recognition, without agreement, without admiration or praise. In a world obsessed with attention, likes, shares, invisible applause, choosing to act silently in line with your values without being seen is a rare form of bravery. The Stoic understands that if your actions depend on others' approval, you are always controlled. You will only say what is right when it's popular. You'll only live by principles when others cheer you on. And you'll forever wait for permission from the world before stepping into yourself. But true courage doesn't wait for a green light. It moves forward quietly, even if misunderstood, judged, or mocked. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish by others." This isn't self-deprecation, it's reality. To live with depth, with reason, with personal values, in a world driven by surface, emotion, and trend will always set you apart. And being different breeds doubt. But if you don't accept this, you'll stay silent when you should speak, avoid when you should face, and please the crowd when you should stay true. Courage is doing what's right by your values, even when it's not understood, not accepted, and not applauded. It's speaking a good idea into a silent room. It's turning down a tempting invitation because it violates your principles. It's continuing to build something you believe in, even when no one notices, no one supports, no one follows. And you still do it because your heart knows it's right. True courage isn't loud, and it doesn't need a stage. It's the quiet repetition of right action, even without reward. The Stoic hones this courage not to reject the world, but to resist its manipulation. They don't rebel against everything, but they know what belongs to them and what doesn't. They don't seek to perform, they seek to be honest in every choice. When you act without applause, you also free yourself from the fear of judgment. You no longer need others' eyes to live meaningfully. And when you release the need for praise, you feel the clarity of inner freedom, a steady place where you no longer ask, "What will people think?" but instead, "Does this align with my values?" Courage isn't a burst of strength, it's the steady repetition of choosing what's right, even when no one sees, no one understands, no one agrees. And in that solitude, strength is forged, character is etched, and your true self emerges not by spotlight, but by the quiet light within. 10. Restraint is a higher form of strength. We often associate strength with action, with resistance, with loud voices, with the ability to strike back or react swiftly. But the Stoic defines strength differently. True strength isn't found in what you can do, but in what you choose not to do when it's unnecessary. Restraint is not weakness. It is the ability to regulate your actions before they're driven by fleeting emotions, by a wounded ego, or by the need to prove something to the world. The Stoic practices restraint not because they lack the power to respond, but because they understand that not every battle is worth entering. There are moments when you have the logic to argue, the wit to win, the authority to suppress, but you choose silence. Not because you can't, but because you don't need to. Because you've come to understand what truly deserves your energy and attention. And not reacting doesn't mean you've surrendered. It is a silent declaration that you are not ruled by circumstance, you rule yourself. Restraint is the ability to pause before reacting, that brief space between stimulus and response where you hold the power to choose. When someone insults you, you can strike back instantly. But if you pause, breathe, and ask yourself, does this reaction reflect the person I want to be? In that moment, you reclaim the command of your mind. The Stoic is not led by provocation. They know that each loss of control is a moment of handing over power to someone else to govern your inner life. In a culture that glorifies speed, instant responses, and public displays of emotion, choosing not to react immediately is a bold act of rebellion. You don't need to speak in every argument. Don't need to prove anything to those who aren't truly listening. Don't need to respond to nonsense just to protect a fragile ego. Every time you exercise restraint, you are choosing stillness over chaos, depth over surface, character over instinct. Restraint is not passive, it is a form of freedom. It's a reminder that you are not a victim of passing emotions. You can listen, understand, feel everything, and still be the one who decides what to do next. And that very power, the choice to stay silent, to not react, to let go of what's unworthy, is what defines the highest kind of strength. Calm clarity in a world that constantly pulls you into its storm of endless reactions. I used to be someone who always waited for inspiration, who relied on others' approval before daring to act. I delayed because I feared failure, because I believed I wasn't ready, because I wanted everything to be perfect from the start. But that delay made me lose myself, until I began to try something that seemed simple, taking action consistently every day, even if it was just a small step, even if no one noticed, even if no one praised it. I learned to focus on what matters, to stop letting the outside world decide what deserves my attention. And little by little, I began to trust myself, not because I was recognized, but because I felt I was living rightly. Change didn't come from a grand moment, but from quiet, repeated choices. I no longer live to be applauded. I live so I don't betray myself. If you found this reflection meaningful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content. And no matter how loud the world gets, as long as you keep a clear direction within, nothing can truly lead you astray.